All right, so quick update. The crankshaft's in, camshaft's physically setting in place. So now I'm gonna start putting some pistons in the bores. Anyways, now I'd already done all the file fitting when I originally built this engine. I was targeting about 8 thousandths ring gap per inch. I ended up approximately 30s, low 30s on the top ring, another couple thousandths, 33, 34 on the middle ring. Eventually I plan on pushing this thing a little bit. That always seems to work. The old adage that if a ring's too tight, everybody's going to know about it, but if a ring's too loose, if your ring gap's too big, nobody's going to know about it. Obviously there's limits to that if you just get crazy, but I'd rather err on just a little bit bigger ring gap. I had no signs of any oil contamination or anything like that when I took it apart, so I think everything's working fine. I had good cranking compression, all that good stuff. Anyways, I will show you the pistons and rods I'm using. So these are the Icon pistons. They're a very small dome. On a big block Chevy, this will give you somewhere in the mid 9-to-1 range, depending on your head. And of course, I'm running a factory head that's rated at 119 cc's, but physically probably measures as somewhere in the 120, 121 range. Anyway, so looking at the piston itself, you can see that I'm still really running a little bit on the rich side. I'm still really dark in some areas, and then you can tell the factory combustion chamber is not the most efficient combustion chamber, as the burn pattern's not completely over the piston, but that's not a bad burn pattern, for 50-year-old technology. On the heads themselves, again, you can see everything was burning pretty good. No oils. You can even look at the plugs. The plugs are still in the head, and no oil contamination or anything like that on it. So other than being just rich on the tune-up, I've been very conservative on this, and I think a lot of it is I haven't been running hardly any timing on it. I had the timing pulled way back, so that, say at 8 pounds of boost, I was only running, around 24 degrees of timing on this thing. On a big block Chevy, most of the time you end up naturally aspirated in that 40-degree range. And most people don't pull hardly any timing until 4 or 5 pounds of boost, and then they'll start pulling roughly 1 per pound of boost after that. Well, I'm yanking a whole bunch, so I was really chicken on this thing, it did make it kind of lazy on full pulls. But again, I was learning the engine management system, and I'd much rather err on conservative than go out and make a Hail Mary pass and have broken parts. As it is, all I did in the grand scheme of things was I lost a bearings raising this thing's apart, like I said before, but that was due to a block error more than anything else. Just pinched the #1 main bearing, and I'll put a picture up on that. Anyway, so just thought I'd show you, what rods, what pistons I'm running. And I'm going to go ahead and start slamming these things in the motor. Talk to you later. All right, so I got another story I'll tell you. This is the one you guys may know the guy. Hopefully he won't mind me sharing. But we're in Springfield, Missouri, and it's Street Machine National time frame. I don't know, early 2000s, I don't know, somewhere in that range. And I was setting up some street races, and there's a guy from St. Louis shows up. This is back when I was a manager of a super shop store, and he's got what most people would consider a T-bucket, but it's really more of an altered. He's got a real long stretch front end on it, and engine sitting, pretty far back, a little bit lower. Like I said, a lot more altered looking than typical T-bucket type setup. Anyways, this got a really mean little small block in it with a plate on it. And of course doesn't weigh nothing. And he was looking for a race. So one of the races that I had him set up with was Scott Palmer and his Camaro that he had at the time. He had a first generation Camaro with a roots type blower on a small block, and he got that thing down into the mid 8s with that combination, and was still driving on the street occasionally, and he agreed to go race. So I take this guy from St. Louis out to where we were going to go race that night, and it was kind of on the way to Bolivar. And if you're familiar with Springfield, Missouri, if you go towards the airport and then turn to the north, it'd be like on a back way to Bolivar, not straight to Bolivar. Anyways, so we go out there and he makes a couple passes, and I mean this thing's fast. He's just ripping it. This is just a 2-lane highway, and he made some real fast passes. This would have been midday. I wanted to take him out there so he could get familiar with it, because these were fast cars. Anyways, so later that night, get everybody together and we start heading out there. And man, there was just lots of people, heard about this race, because these were 2 really fast cars. I mean, you don't see 8-second cars making that many passes out on the street. Back then. It's still pretty uncommon today in the grand scheme of things, but back then it was really uncommon. Anyway, so finally we agree, and this guy suits up. I mean, he had his jacket, his pants, his helmet, and all he puts on. And Scott pulls out into the road first and does his burnout, and I hear this other guy from St. Louis, and I wish I could think of his name, but I just cannot remember his name. Anyways, I hear his car running, and it's just sitting there over there idling, and I wait, and I'm out there in the street waiting on him, and he's just sitting there, and not sure what's going on. I give him a couple more minutes. I could hear his engine running. Scott's did his burnout, and I take off and go check on him, see what's going on. And he's sitting in his car, and he's got his steering wheel, and he's just spinning it like a roulette wheel. The rag joint had broke on his steering shaft, and so he had no steering. And we had just made these high-speed blasts just a few hours ago out there, and just one of them fluke things that luckily it didn't give out during that high-speed pass, and just on his way to just driving out there, it happened to fail when he was parking his car, getting set up for the race. That's when the rag joint failed. Instead of, during the race, that could have been real bad for him, for Scott. It was a messed up deal. But that was one of it could have been just one awesome race, but it ended up being almost more significant in that guy, like I said, he was just sitting in that car. He knew exactly what the consequences was. Just sitting in there with his helmet on, with his fire jacket on, just sitting there spinning that steering wheel, knowing that could have happened to him at 150, 160 mile an hour in just a few seconds if it hadn't happened right then. So definitely, luck was on his side that night. Nothing significant happened. We got him set up with a new rag joint, the next day, and he was driving around again. But that race did not end up happening. He ended up racing another car from Springfield, but that'll be for another story. Anyways, just thought I'd tell you another one of the tales back from the day. Bye.